Have you ever noticed how silence feels heavier when you're alone? Most men mistake that silence for emptiness and rush to fill it scrolling endlessly, chasing likes, begging for attention, or drowning themselves in meaningless conversations. But here's the truth, that craving is not a sign of loneliness. It's a sign of weakness. Epictetus once said, "Don't wish for events to happen as you want them, but wish for them to happen as they do, and you will live in peace." When you constantly seek validation, you're confessing silently that you cannot stand on your own. And nothing enslaves a man faster than depending on others to tell him who he is. Think about it. A man spends his nights waiting for a message, a notification, a signal that he matters. He believes he's feeding the emptiness, but in reality, he's starving his soul. The more he looks outward, the less he finds inward. Anxiety grows. Self-respect fades. And soon his entire life revolves around chasing cravings that were never meant to be satisfied. Seneca warned us that he who is enslaved to his desires is already in chains, and that's exactly what happens when you trade silence for noise. You hand over your power to strangers who don't care about your destiny. But there is another path. Learn to sit in silence not as punishment, but as training. Imagine a warrior walking through fire without begging for water. That is what solitude demands of you. When you stop craving the outside world and start building within, you discover something rare, inner stability, a strength no one can give you and no one can take away. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily, look well into yourself. There is a source of strength which will always spring up if you will always look. The man who closes the door on emotional cravings doesn't lose power. He multiplies it. His solitude becomes not a prison, but a forge. And in that forge, a stronger self is created, untouchable by the world. Neglecting daily discipline is one of the most silent, yet destructive mistakes a man can make when living alone. Without someone watching, the temptation to drift is overwhelming. Days blur into nights, weeks vanish, and suddenly life feels wasted. Solitude without discipline doesn't give you freedom, it breeds chaos. Seneca said, "Discipline is the mother of success." Discipline is not a prison. It is the architecture of liberty. It transforms empty hours into opportunities. Imagine two men. One wakes up at noon, scrolling through distractions, complaining that life feels heavy. The other rises at dawn, trains his body, sharpens his mind, and works on his purpose. Both live alone, but their lives are not even comparable. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself each morning to rise with purpose, not to waste the gift of a new day. Discipline turns solitude into a fortress. Every routine, waking early, exercising, reading, writing is not suffering, but alignment. It bends time to your will, instead of letting time bend you. A man without discipline becomes a prisoner of impulses. He eats when bored, sleeps when anxious, scrolls when restless. His dreams rot in silence. But the disciplined man transforms solitude into strength. Each habit becomes a weapon, proof that comfort does not rule him. Epictetus taught, "No man is free who is not master of himself," that mastery is built daily. In the unseen hours, in the choices no one applauds. Every morning, you sharpen the sword of your destiny or you let it rust. Discipline decides whether solitude destroys you or forges you into something unbreakable. Fearing silence is one of the gravest mistakes a man living alone can make. Silence is not empty, is alive. It reflects who you truly are without masks or distractions. Yet most men run from it, filling every moment with noise, chatter, or glowing screens. But the silence they avoid is the very place where true power is forged. Marcus Aurelius wrote his meditations not in applause, but in stillness. He knew that wisdom is born in quiet reflection. Noise promises comfort, but delivers weakness. A man who cannot endure silence does not know himself, and a man who does not know himself is easily controlled by the world. Seneca reminded us, as long as you live, keep learning how to live. Silence is the classroom where this lesson unfolds. In quiet, you see the truth of your thoughts. In quiet, you strip away illusions. In quiet, you discover resilience that no storm can break. Picture a warrior who avoids training because the arena feels empty. When battle comes, he is unprepared, not because the enemy was stronger, but because he never faced himself. That is the fate of a man who flees from silence. But the one who embraces it transforms solitude into a temple. He learns patience, focus, and endurance. Epictetus said, "Freedom is the right to live as we wish, and freedom begins in silence, where you master your own mind. If you cannot sit quietly for 10 minutes, how will you stand firm in the storms of life?" The man who befriends silence becomes untouchable, because he no longer fears being alone with himself. Ignoring physical self-care silently poisons the foundation of a man's strength. Many believe body and mind are separate, but the Stoics knew they are allies. A neglected body weakens focus, steals energy, and clouds clarity. Seneca declared, "No man is sound of soul without sound of body." Living alone makes this trap more dangerous. No one notices when you skip training, eat poorly, or stay up all night. Excuses multiply until you become a shell of yourself, irritable, unfocused. Men often chase power, but discard the simplest path to it, their own health. Strength is not vanity. It is the ability to carry a disciplined mind through life's storms. Training the body is not just building muscle, it is rehearsing resilience, proving daily that comfort does not rule you. Food, rest, and movement are not luxuries. They are weapons. Picture two men living alone. One fills his days with junk food and late nights. The other treats his body as sacred, training with consistency, eating with discipline, resting with intention. Their lives are worlds apart, not because of fate, but because of choice. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events, but the body is the vessel of that mind. If you neglect it, you dull your spirit. If you master it, you gain an armor no storm can break." Each decision, a night. Tomorrow, every day decides whether your body betrays you or carries you forward unshakable. Living trapped in the past is one of the most subtle prisons a man can build. Alone with his thoughts, he replays betrayals, failures, and regrets that no longer exist anywhere but in his mind. He thinks he is reflecting, but in truth he is chaining himself to ghosts. Epictetus taught, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." The past cannot harm you anymore unless you hand it power with your thoughts. A man chained to old wounds poisons his present, sabotages new opportunities, and fears relationships because he expects betrayal again. Imagine a warrior entering battle while dragging corpses of old wars tied to his back. He is slower, weaker, and eventually defeated not because the enemy was stronger, but because he refused to drop the weight. This is what happens when you cling to the past. You think you are honoring your pain, but you are sabotaging your future. Forgiveness is not weakness. It is a weapon. It cuts the chains of resentment and frees you to walk unburdened. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." Every scar can become a lesson. Every betrayal a test. Every failure a form of training. Seneca warned that resentment only wastes the present. The choice is brutal but clear. Die chained to yesterday, or release it and step into today unbound. The man who lets go transforms pain into wisdom. The man who clings to it wakes up old, bitter, and empty. The question is, which one will you be? Chasing external approval is one of the most seductive poisons a man can drink. It disguises itself as progress, a like, a compliment, a message. For a moment you feel significant till silence returns and you are empty again. This cycle is not empowerment. It is enslavement. Marcus Aurelius warned, "It is not the opinion of others, but your own reasoned choice that shapes your life. When you live for approval, you surrender the throne of your mind. You allow strangers to dictate your value, leaving you like a leaf tossed by the wind, never rooted, never free." Epictetus reminded us that freedom begins when you no longer depend on what lies outside yourself. Approval is unstable. One day you are praised, the next you are forgotten. A man who ties his worth to applause will always feel small when the crowd turns away. Picture two men. One wakes each morning desperate to know if the world noticed him. His energy rises and falls with numbers on a screen. The other wakes with a quiet fire. His measure of success is not how many saw him, but whether he conquered his weakness, kept his word, and moved closer to his mission. Who do you think is truly untouchable? Seneca said, "A man is enslaved to whatever he cannot part with. If you cannot part with approval, you are its slave. But if you stand on the unshakable ground of your values, you become rare and free. The man who refuses to beg for validation does not lose power, he claims it." Choosing short-term comfort over long-term growth is one of the deadliest traps of solitude. It feels harmless in the moment. A soft bed, endless scrolling, a meal that satisfies but weakens. But these small choices weave a web that traps you in mediocrity. Seneca wrote, "Nothing valuable comes without struggle. True achievement grows not in comfort, but in endurance." Every empire, every body of wisdom, every great man was forged by rejecting ease today for strength tomorrow. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily, the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Discomfort is not punishment, it is the path to transformation. When you avoid it, you avoid growth. When you endure it, you forge resilience. Picture two men. One skips the workout, delays the project, avoids the hard conversation. At first it feels like relief, but years later, his reflection is soft, weakened by regret. The other pushes through the cold morning run, works while others rest, sacrifices comfort for a greater purpose. His reflection is iron, built by patience and struggle. Epictetus said, "No man is free who is not master of himself. Mastery is proven in these small moments when comfort whispers, and you refuse to obey. Comfort is a thief dressed as a friend. Growth is a strict teacher that feels harsh now, but crowns you later. The choice is offered every day, and the man you will become hides in that choice." Surrounding yourself with toxic people or isolating yourself completely silently poisons the soul. Many men think solitude shields them from influence, but the truth is sharper. The people you allow in your life shape your destiny. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "We are made for cooperation. Humans are not designed to thrive in total isolation or to be dragged down by destructive company. Both extremes are deadly. Toxic people drain your vision, weaken your standards, and infect your mind with negativity. On the other hand, complete withdrawal hardens into isolation. Like stagnant water, the mind cut off from healthy connections begins to rot. Seneca warned that a man who imitates the vices of others becomes worse than they are. Being around the wrong crowd makes you smaller, but even one wise companion can sharpen you. Epictetus taught that we must carefully choose whom we spend our time with, because their character will rub off on us, whether we notice it or not. Picture two men. One surrounds himself with cynics and drifters. Slowly, he becomes like them, bitter and drained. The other carefully selects even one or two allies who challenge his weakness and remind him of his mission. His solitude becomes sharper, stronger, more resilient. Every person in your life is either building your empire or burning it. There is no neutral ground. Choose wisely who walks beside you in your solitude, for they will either forge your greatness or destroy it. Living without purpose or clear goals is like sailing an endless sea without a compass. The winds of life carry you anywhere, and every day feels the same. You move, but you go nowhere. This is not living. It is drifting. Seneca wrote, "If one does not know to which port one is sailing, a wind is favorable. Without direction, even strength and effort are wasted." For men in solitude, this danger is magnified. Ours alone becomes suffocating when they are not aimed toward something meaningful. Marcus Aurelius anchored himself each morning with purpose, to serve, to live with virtue, to fulfill his duty. He didn't wait for inspiration, he created direction daily. Purpose does not need to be grand. It only needs to be clear. Building your health, mastering a craft, serving others, any of these can guide your solitude. Picture two men. One drifts, changing course every week, chasing whatever feels good in the moment. He collapses when storms come because he has nothing worth enduring for. The other has a clear mission. He faces setbacks, but each challenge hardens his resolve. Both live alone, but only one uses solitude as fuel. Epictetus said, "First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do." A man without purpose is already defeated. A man with even a modest goal walks with power. Solitude without purpose is a curse. Solitude with purpose is a weapon. Letting pride block learning blinds more men than failure ever will. Failure can teach, but pride slams the door before wisdom even enters. The man who believes he already knows enough condemns himself to stagnation. He may appear confident, but inside he is hollow. Seneca warned, "Ignorance is not the absence of knowledge, but the refusal to seek it." Pride whispers, "You've suffered enough. You don't need guidance." But this whisper is a trap. Life moves forward, challenges rise, and the man who refuses to learn is left defenseless. Humility is not weakness. It is strength disguised as openness. Epictetus reminded us, it is impossible for a man to learn what he thinks he already knows. True power comes from the courage to admit you are still a student. Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, wrote nightly in his journal, reminding himself of lessons and mistakes. If the most powerful man on earth remained a student, what excuse do we have? Picture two warriors before battle. One refuses to learn new techniques, clinging to pride. The other sharpens his weapons, studies constantly, and seeks correction. When the fight begins, only one survives the one, humble enough to keep growing. Pride builds walls. Humility builds doors. And those doors open to mastery. The question is simple. Are you building walls that will one day collapse on you, or doors that lead you to the next level of strength? Losing control of your emotions is one of the most dangerous traps of solitude. Loneliness magnifies everything. A spark of anger becomes wildfire. A flicker of fear turns into shadow. A moment of sadness deepens into despair. The danger is not the feelings themselves, but surrendering to them. Epictetus taught, men are disturbed not by things, but by the views which they take of them. Events hold no power until you hand them meaning. If you cannot govern your emotions, you become a puppetanger, dictates your words, fear your choices, sadness your energy. And these storms always strike at the worst moment. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, you have power over your mind, not outside events. The Stoics knew emotions are not enemies. They are raw energy waiting to be shaped. Anger can fuel justice. Fear can sharpen awareness. Sadness can deepen wisdom. But only if you remain commander of the ship. Picture a warrior in battle. If he panics, he exposes himself. If he rages blindly, he tires quickly. But if he remains calm under fire, he sees clearly, acts decisively, and wins. Life is the same. The man who stays composed when everything collapses is the man who cannot be broken. Seneca said, "He who conquers himself is the mightiest warrior." That conquest happens daily in reflection, journaling, and training the inner world. Emotions left unchecked will crash you into ruin. But emotions mastered become your greatest weapon. The choice is yours. Be prisoner of the storm or its master. Quitting at the first difficulty is the grave where countless dreams are buried. Most men retreat when resistance comes, mistaking obstacles as signs to turn back. But Marcus Aurelius declared, "The obstacle is the way. Hardship is not the enemy, is the forge that shapes you." The pattern is familiar. A man begins with excitement, sets a goal, but the moment fatigue or rejection arrives, he convinces himself it wasn't meant to be. He doesn't see that the very challenge he fled was the doorway to transformation. Difficulty is not punishment, it is initiation. Seneca said, "Fire tests gold, suffering tests brave men. Resistance is the hammer that shapes the soul." Just as weight builds muscle and trials build wisdom, without pressure, there is no growth. The tragedy is that many quit just before their breakthrough. Picture two men before a mountain. One looks at the steep climb and walks away. The other climbs despite the burn in his legs, and at the summit, he sees a world the quitter will never know. Their difference is not talented, is endurance. Epictetus reminded us, no great thing is created suddenly. Growth demands persistence. The man who endures difficulty becomes unshakable. The one who quits remains ordinary, buried under comfort. The question is simple. When hardship comes, will you retreat like the masses, or step forward into the fire that forges legends? Refusing to rewrite your mental story is perhaps the most dangerous mistake of all. Many men live chained to a script they never chose, memories of rejection, betrayal, and failure, replayed until they become identity. They tell themselves, I am the one who always fails. I am the one left behind. And by repeating this, they live it again and again. Marcus Aurelius reminded us, you have power over your mind, not outside events. The past happened. Yes, but its meaning belongs to you. Two men may carry the same scars. One sees weakness and collapses. The other sees lessons and walks forward with armor that no one can pierce. Seneca wrote, a man is as unhappy as he has convinced himself he is. If you refuse to reframe your story, you let ghosts author your destiny. But when you dare to rewrite it, you stop being a victim and become the architect of your future. Picture a man dragging words carved deep in his mind. You're not worthy. You'll always fail. He carries them everywhere, and they shape his every step. Then imagine the moment he realizes the chains are illusions. He breaks them and walks freely into tomorrow. That freedom is available to every man willing to rewrite his story. Epictetus taught, it's not what happens to you, but how you react that matters. Your solitude can be a prison repeating the same script. Or it can be a library, a forge, a sanctuary where you write a new identity. The choice is urgent. Continue living the same day 1,000 times, or rise as the man who refuses to be defined by his past.